spices.
And we are lucky to have a community working towards further embracing and implementing artistic yet technically attainable ways of incorporating waste into work. I would love to introduce Jonathan and Lonali. Jonathan is an architect, and Lonali from the founder of House of Lonali to further take the floor.
Check, check, check. Check one, check, check.
Yes, and this is actually to share your knowledge and share your experience and make this more a conversation,
Check
not
one,
just
check.
like two of us talking here.
Check one, check. Check one.
Once you are done with this, we'll also go into a video where the main focus is
Check one,
we're going
check,
to build up
check, check,
this
check.
talk as well as for you to ask any questions
Check
from
one,
us
check, check.
from the video as well.
Check one, check, 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 check.
සීය පටන් ගත්තේ කලාතනය 1944. අපිට ඒ කාලේ ඉඳන්ම කොස්ටියුම්ස් තියෙනවා. ඒ කොස්ටියුම්ස් වල කොටස් පාවිච්චි කරනවා අලුත් කොස්ටියුම් එකක් හදනකොට.
I had a
සීය පටන් ගත්තේ කලාතනය 1944. අපිට ඒ කාලේ ඉඳන්ම කොස්ටියුම්ස් තියෙනවා. ඒ කොස්ටියුම්ස් වල කොටස් පාවිච්චි කරනවා අලුත් කොස්ටියුම් එකක් හදනකොට.
I had a father who was very much involved in alternative energy, alternative farming methods, and so I grew up with these ideas.
My grandmother was a pioneer in pairing batik with chain stitch. As a kid, I remember seeing her use material just lying around the house to stitch rugs and things.
My parents have taught us to save ice cream tubs, Astra cups, any plastic container actually, to store our leftover food and curries. It's a Sri Lankan thing.
Sustainability is nothing new to Sri Lankans. It has been a part of our culture, values, tradition, as well as local art forms like dance, painting, poetry, fashion, and even architecture for years. In a time when throwaway culture is becoming a huge threat to our environment, we felt the need to remind people of an age-old sustainable practice, which to date has no proper Sinhalese term: upcycling.
ගුරු චිත්‍රසේන සහ ගුරු වජ්‍රා කියන්නේ මගේ සියයි ආච්චි. කවුරු හරි අහුවම කොයි කාලෙද ඔයා නටන්න පටන් ගත්තේ? ඇත්තටම මට හිතා ගන්න බෑ කොයි කාලෙද කියලා. මොකද මතක කාලෙක ඉඳන් නටන එක තමයි කරේ. මෙතන කලායතනේ අලුතෙන් මෙතන ගුරු ගෙදරක් හැදුවා. ඉතින් ආච්චි එතනට මූව් වුණා මේ ළඟකදී. ගෙනාපු බඩුවල වැඩියෙන්ම තිබ්බේ එක එක යා එකතු කරපු රෙදි ಜಾති. මොනා හරි දෙයකට අවශ්‍ය වුණොත් එයාගේ ඒ පෙට්ටියකින් අරගෙන ඉක්මනට පාවිච්චි කරනවා.
I did 7 exhibitions since 2005 on climate change, long before it was called climate change, right? So it was my first exhibition on it was in Sydney. It's very much showing man being very small and insignificant in the space of the environment.
So I've been working as an architect but also helping out with the craft center called the Aluvihara Heritage Center, which works with batik. How I approach like architecture and things like that, they're always looking to see how can I minimize the waste I produce from the onset. I think there's like beauty in like everyday things, and eventually those things might come together into something.
I write because I need to get clarity on a subject, or I need I need to understand something better. I don't know if I can consider myself or advertise myself as a sustainable person, because I feel there's always more that you can do. I think with a lot of people who've just grown up in Sri Lanka, it's something that, I mean, your parents have taught you, you've just grown into.
ඔසරිය ස්ටයිල් එක අපිට ටිකක් දැන් කරන නැටුම් එක දැන් යන නිර්මාණ එක ටිකක් අමාරුයි මනුව කරන්න ඇඟ එහෙම ඒ කියන්නේ කකුල් වැඩියෙන්ම ටිකක් රිස්ට්‍රික්ට් වෙනවා. I think ඒක කොහොමද අපිට ටිකක් වෙනස් කරලා නැවත භාවිතා කරන විදිහට හදා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා බලන්න.
I love cloth as well, so that's why some of the images, even what was used for the Venice Biennale, was printed on cloth. I mean, I just don't want to throw them away.
This is one of my most treasured items. 2 of my friends were traveling, and they were the first 2 people that I ever shared my writing with. They got me this bag, but it kind of started disintegrating a few years ago. For the longest time, telling myself that I will get it fixed and make sure that I will reuse it and keep it with me.
What I'm going to give you are multiple scraps from an architectural project. The batik was done by the ladies at the Lonali Heritage Center.
So this was a project I had to do for Making Matters project, which was actually initiated by the British Council UK. They've selected 6 designers from around the world, 2 from South Asia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and 2 from African countries. So it was about, for our task was to talk about a local story in a global platform. And I've got the opportunity to do the same. And me being obviously running a brand which upcycles textile waste for 10 years, I was asking myself, how do I take my story or our story to a global platform? And I always had, as a designer, I always had the question of, okay, I do upcycling with textile waste, mainly because there is a huge apparel industry in Sri Lanka, and there's a lot of pre-consumer waste that ends up in landfill. So that what I do is I work with the industry, get the waste and convert things. But at the same time, during COVID, I asked the question, why not post-consumer waste? Because a lot of foreign countries, you must have heard about the post-consumer waste, how you wear clothes, change it, fast fashion, you change this trend so fast, the fashion so fast. You throw your clothes, it ends up in landfills, or sometimes it's bundled up and send it back to third world countries, right? So what happens to, because I've during my 10 years or 8 years experience, at the time 2 years ago, I didn't see a lot of post-consumer waste in Sri Lanka. So this is a question I wanted to ask, and that led me to find out where is the beginning of upcycling, how did it all started. Then I also realized, I mean, that's where I wanted to bring in, find out and realize that sustainability has been a part of our life for a long time, ever since I grew up. And I've obviously heard my parents talking about it and my grandparents talking about it. And to go further, I think it runs back to Buddhism, where it explains the robe is made out of the cloth that you wrap the body, basically. So in Buddhism it says you have to don't use new cloth for the robe. You use the old clothes which you wrap the body. And also, after you use it as a robe, there's 10 ways of reusing, upcycling and recycling is, and one way it says you put it with clay and use it for your walls. So it goes back way back than what I guess I know. It's nothing that is new to me. It's nothing that something that I created or anything. So I realized that sustainable practices in Sri Lanka, in our culture, runs way back. But at the same time, we've evolved. Trends have come in. Different lifestyles have come in. We've got used to the mass consumption, mass production, good life, you know, how we define our good life, how we define luxury, what luxury is. So we've evolved through the time. At the same time, we've had hard times where we had wars, economic crisis, where every time the need of sustainable practices have also kind of popped out. And we were in a lockdown and an economic crisis, and I thought this is the best way to communicate a local story to a global platform, and also start talking about the good practices we have and start preserving it, rather than running behind the wrong trends that are right ahead, right in front of us. Maybe it's time that we take a step back, look back inwards and see what good values we have to preserve. Can we close the door, please? So that's basically how this whole concept started. So going back, the easiest way for me to go back in research was to work with 4 artists. In the video you must have seen Thaji, who's a 3rd generation dancer, Chitra Senaguru's granddaughter, who's preserving a dance culture, talks about how they still have the amazing costumes that were used back in 1940s, how they preserve the costumes. I mean, I saw it in detail, that how they fold a jacket where you don't touch the hooks, because hooks gave nothing malakada kana. So that much of in detail, right? So they go into that kind of detail to preserve their traditions as well as the costumes. Then Anoma, who's an artist who's been communicating climate change and environmental impact throughout her art since, like she said before, we were talking about climate change. And as a person, I think she's grown up in a very sustainable house where her father was an innovator, and she says how she used to go shopping vintage clothes when she was studying in UK. So these were little practices that we've kind of found out during the program, I mean the videos and conversation, which we never, we didn't think of that it will come through, but it came through in a very interesting way that, okay, this runs through to a long, you know, it's in our culture, it's in our art, it's in our day-to-day life, basically. And then, of course, Jonathan and Tashi, who's more into a new generation, and they talk about how sometimes they're distant. Tashi says she's distant, but she knows that her parents, how her parents practiced it and how her grandparents did it at home, but how they're also been, how they see the new world. I mean, going to Tashi's, you must have seen the environment that she lives in, where there's a paddy field and there's a new road coming through the paddy field, and she was saying how the development is actually damaging the environment. So they are in a generation, we are all in a generation where now we see the beauty, but there's a lot of destroying happening. So it's a different challenge for the younger generation to how to kind of face this challenge. So that's basically what we tried to capture. And on the way, we didn't have really a topic for this, but we've realized we've been practicing it forever, but we don't have a Sinhalese word for upcycling. So that's how the topic came up right at the end. I would say it's after 95% of the videos done, we've kind of came up with the name Namak Nathi Kalawak. Because in one of my presentations, I told the UK participants that, you know, I don't know a name in Sinhalese to say, and then that was the point that we kind of figured out, okay, this is what we were going to call it. So this is basically the background of the video, but I like to share a few things with Jonathan and talk about how both of us experienced the process and what some of our learnings, because it's never something that I've expected or planned, but I've learned a lot. And one thing I've learned from Jonathan is, of course, how he collects all different types of waste, you know, how I think we've asked the question also, how many of you see waste as an interesting thing? I think we've got a lot of people saying that it's interesting, but how do you like feel like keeping it, collecting it, and, you know, make it a point to go and grab it?
Oops, that was really loud. Yeah, so for me, I think it's the creative side of, like, I think architecture and the work I do that kind of helps me see like magic in all these random things. So it might be a piece of polythene, but it's a cool green color, and I'm like, this might come in handy someday. And
I don't know if you guys saw in the video, there was like a sort of a cone, like a chaitya, like a upside down. Can you guess what that was? Guess? Any guesses? It looked like a chaitya, kind of golden with a point on the top. Guesses? It's actually an ice cream cone.
mold.
You want to talk about that story?
Yeah. So it's So I saw this object. It was really beautiful, and I wasn't sure what it was, but it was a beautiful, like, sculptural little thing. And it was only when I questioned the person who owned it as to what it was, they were like, yeah, this is how they used to make ice cream cones. But of course, we've moved beyond the
point where you make individual ice cream cones. We have ice cream cone making factories, and like it's gone the distance, but that whole cone is made out of solid brass. There's intrinsic value in it, but there's also a heritage from which it comes. And that was the beauty I saw in it. I don't know what it will be used for. At the moment, I think I have some brass rings on it, but it will change with time.
So yeah, I think the word is we see the beauty in waste. We see an opportunity in waste. I think that's where my whole 10 years of doing what I'm doing is based on, because when I look at waste, I feel it's very interesting. And post-consumer waste especially is very interesting because it comes with a story. Like he said, it'll have an age this much back then, somebody used it, now it's not used. This is such a story that comes with most of the things that we use. It might be a personality, like Tashana talks about how she got this bag from Mexico, but it was given to her by the two people who read her poem first, and that's the attachment that she has. So the post-consumer waste, the interesting part is you get it with a story, you get it with so much memories, attachment, and that's where I think you have to kind of start preserving. And we always think that wearing old clothes or your parents' clothes are not very funky, but sometimes wearing your old parents' old stories are really funky than what you can get just in a store, which just looks funky. So that's why I think looking at waste differently, I think that's basically both of us work on, as in differently in different spaces in our careers, that we use waste as a fun thing.
Yeah, so for me, one of the big questions for you, Lonali, was what got you into waste when you were at AOD, and what was the magic you saw as a student? So
I think for me it was mainly when I was doing fashion, I had a lot of projects to do with the industry, and we went up and down to different factories, and then I saw a lot of waste. At the same time, I saw a lot of people, all my colleagues were doing their collections with, go to the store, buy fabric, and I was like, for me it was not challenging enough. It was not fun enough, you design something, go to a shop, you get the material and you make it. It was just not fun enough. So I kind of challenged myself, how can I do this differently? At the same time, a bit of passion towards, the environment, animals, and, who I am. So I think all these connected the dots, connecting the dots of, having a problem in the industry where there's waste, me not enjoying the typical process, and then also wanting to do something different and using waste material as an opportunity. So just connecting these dots just made me do it. But it took few years for me to figure out that there is a financial benefit out of it. It's a business model itself.
And speaking of challenge, you want to talk about the shirt you're wearing and how you've kind of...
So this is just a extra large shirt that I've worn upside down. A little bit of change in the color, of course. There was a hole somewhere down here, so I kind of had to cut it and construct the collar. But it's just a large shirt upside down. Somebody actually asked me on the way, saying, "Are you sure you're wearing the right side?" So that's basically it. You just need to think differently and make sure that it's just communicate something rather than, I prefer somebody asking me why you're wearing the shirt upside down, because I can say that there was a hole, which I kind of turned it upside down and made sure that it just covers with the collar. So the thing is, that's a fun thing for me to kind of talk about. It's a way of me talking, using my form of art, fashion, to communicate who I am and what I want to believe. How's your experience working with the Aluvihara heritage, and what have you learned, seen their practices? Because I saw a lot of you also answering that you've seen your parents and grandparents talking about sustainable practices, but I also saw that you haven't. You have actually thrown your clothes to a bin. I was surprised because I didn't expect a lot of people. It's something I've never heard that people throw in Sri Lanka. We kind of donate. We have charity programs. We give it, share with our brothers, siblings, domestics, goes all around. So it's a point that we need to kind of go back to see what we've learned from the heritage, the artisans to villagers and our grandparents.
Yeah, so for me, one of, I think, the highlights of my life is the work I get to do with the Aluvihara Heritage Center, which was founded by Ina De Silva.
You guys need to Google Ina De Silva.
Yeah. And what's amazing is in the way in which they practice, where they save every little scrap of fabric, thread, you name it. Batik is a wax resist dye process, so you paint with wax and then you dip it in dye, and then whatever has not touched the wax will come out in the color of the dye. So they'll even go to the extent of saving the wax that falls on the floor to keep the process going. So it's not just like if you're cooking and a grain of rice falls, you sweep it away. It's paying attention to the little details, not just because it has a financial benefit, but also because there's a responsibility as a person to use the materials you have to the fullest. So that's one of the biggest learnings I've had from them, where all these little scraps can eventually become a patchwork bag, or it can become a cushion cover, or there's so many opportunities there. And that was one of the reasons from our office we had done this big batik bedhead panel, and we were getting ready for the installation, and then the carpenters are there and they're getting ready to cut all these, to fix the panels, and then there are all these little offcuts. And for me, I know that it took 2 ladies 30 days to make that bedhead panel. And for me, all those strips could have added to at least a week of work, although it was cut off, and I did not have the heart to throw it away. So I stood there with the carpenters and said, okay, mata me kala denna, me kala denna, me kala denna. And I'm like collecting all these things. They thought I was a lunatic. But for me, it was, I know the work that went into it. I saw the beauty in it, and I just held on to it, not knowing what to do, until I met Lonali this past April, and I was like, hey, I have all these scraps. Do you think you could make something out of it?
And you can go down to 17th floor. That shirt is there hanged. You can see how the little 4-inch panels have come together and completed the shirt. I think you already wore it a few times. It's pretty okay. Yeah, I think I think it's the time we are in a really, this country is in a time where we really need to talk about preserving our good values, especially now. We're talking about climate change, we're talking about economic crisis, and this is the time, I think, when you don't have stuff, it's easier to, when you don't have options. And I'll explain to you another great story. Jonathan loves this story, a buttonhole story. So you go close to the shirt and see how we've done the buttons. It's done with not really buttonholes. It's with 2 plackets, two strips. Mainly because at the time when I started, I didn't own a buttonhole machine, which was very expensive. It was very expensive, so I didn't own a buttonhole machine. So I had to figure out a way to do buttonholes somehow. So that made me try out different things and have a kind of, coming out a way of making my own button placket. So that's why I think when we don't have things right now, we're going through so much of import bans, which is good. Look at the good side of it. This is a time that we need to really think of how do we make things, how do we make our own things at home, can we upcycle it, can we reuse it? It's very difficult to recycle, but how can we kind of give that attention? So this is the process that I went through with the buttonhole until I got my machine 2 years ago. But it was a story I will ever, that's a good learning, I think, that when you don't have things, you try to figure it out on your own. So this is a good time for us when we are in a struggle. There's so much of problems, it's time for us to find creative solutions. So I think you need to be artistic in any form. Art can be a good problem solver, make you find solutions, especially when it comes to waste. I think there's so much opportunity for you to be creative and make use of that value back into life. So that's, I think, basically our story. We are open up for any questions, and if you have any questions.
Yeah, so my question was, so I heard that Lonali, when you were at AOD, you were looking for scrap, while other people were looking for fresh material and going to stores, and they were doing the standard way, and you did things differently. And even Jonathan, like when you were going about, even in Ina's project, you were doing things differently. You were always looking for things to collect and everything. So like when you did things differently, how did other people take, like, were there any challenges within yourself when you're presenting? Did you have any fear? Or like, how did you feel like when you were kind of coming up with doing things differently?
I think one of my friends, Angelo, is here, and he'll attest to it. Everyone in my life knows that I'm a magpie, a polkitcha, where I collect everything. So it's gotten to a point where it's a part of being Jonathan, that I am going to collect all these random things. So even with my suppliers or fabricators on a project, if I go and I'm like, hari me capita kella mata denna, they'll be like, hari sir, so mewane collect karanne. So then I think once it becomes a part of you, everyone else also kind of falls into alignment. And interestingly, given that we're at CIT, the other thing with waste is that if you're able to be, how do you say, you have to be able to spot it and see the use for it. So for example, the MMCA used to be, I think, a floor below us, but then when they were moving, there was plywood left over, and then there was an exhibition I was working on, which was Columboscope, and then we knew that we needed to buy plywood, and we knew that this plywood from here was going to go to waste. So then it's making those connections and saying, okay, team from Columboscope, can you speak to the MMCA? There is material. And then making those connections for people. And the more you do it, the more it becomes normal for people.
It's good to be called a polkitcha. I'm called as Colombo Municipal Council. So I wish I was called a polkitcha. So for me, it's like you go collecting waste is like we are basically called here comes that miss who collects waste. And I mean, it builds upon you. You're also, I'm proud to be called that now, than saying I'm someone else. So in a way, that builds who we are. Bit challenging because it's sometimes, you know, it's annoying, or I don't know sometimes, but it feels good to now. Now, of course, we've come in a way, I've come in that far, it's like, it's good to be called that way. But it's also what we are trying to do is changing a system, which is the biggest challenge. When I take waste, people ask me, why are you making stuff with waste? You can go get good fabric. So it's a lot of mindset change that, but it's always about, I mean, but I guess it's a step going forward. I mean, just like challenge yourself to, you know, have to make people learn and figure out what the value is. That part is, takes a lot of time, especially you're trying to convey a message. You need to show the process. They are rejecting you because they also don't know what upcycling is.
You to like kind of see, okay, waste is something different. It can be more than just waste. It was passed down from our generations, but it was subconsciously working at the back of our heads. But now that we are going forward, I mean, us designers, we already know the concept. We already know how waste works, and it's not actually waste. We shouldn't be calling it that. It's material, and it's actually important to us. But then if we see like the demographic which is being influenced, which is being changed, they always go to this certain aesthetic, and they think adding, reusing or recycling, that would have like this odd pattern or something. Like if I take for an example using bottle like empty Nescafe jars to like store spices or something, they would be like, oh, that's gonna look ugly in my kitchen. And there's this conception in their mind. It's like this weird, that trend that has been going, like everything should be aesthetically pleasing and all of that. So would there be a risk in the future generations if, like, you know, this trend also follows while we are also backing up with and retaliating with like another concept?
So the thing is, what is aesthetically pleasing is something that has been fed to us. So you'll see it on your Pinterest board or Instagram, and you're conditioned to think that this is what is good. And it is a conscious effort, because when I was growing up and in our kitchen we had all our jam bottles with the spices, it never looked ugly to me until I get on social media and then I start seeing all these curated pantries. Yes, that's beautiful. But what is more beautiful is what you already have in hand. And I think that's it takes personal growth to see what you already have. But also, if let's say you're starting off and you're going to start off with your beautiful glass jars for your spices, keep using those glass jars. Don't change it 5 months down the line because there's a new glass jar trend.
I think we've lost individuality. So if we have the individuality, especially in fashion, you should be able to say, okay, I wear clothes with holes, and I prefer saying that it's just a hole than, you know, if I throw this, I'm throwing so much of value. People have spent so much of time to make this, get this. There's so much of water that goes into making 1 kilogram of cotton, and then when you have a hole, you just throw it. No, you can't. You value it. So again, it's your individuality and what you want to say. What we now try to say, like he said, what is on Instagram, what's on our trend, everybody else is wearing, so let me also wear it, you know. But if we go into our hearts and ask what our value is, I'm sure we all have that value embedded in our families, to our culture. This is what we need to bring back and preserve it, so that we as a whole, we kind of, you know, it's not something that we can be definitely something that we can do, and start thinking what your values and how we can align our consumption, our way of living, our purchases, how we style, how we do everything in our life, basically.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, thank you so much for coming for this talk, and it was very informative, and like, I hope like even the audience, they were exposed to new ways of thinking, and new conceptions that we have been trying to influence them with for the past couple of time or so. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.